So with that, I will call the February 7th, 2023 Finance Committee meeting to order. Our agenda for tonight, we have a finance director update and discussion of special town meeting articles, CPC attendee to talk about a potential increase of the CPA surcharge, public input, member updates, approval of previous meeting minutes. We likely will not do that today as Marilyn wasn't on the invite, but we'll approve them all the next meeting we have, and then adjournment. One thing that I thought made sense, if anyone else here, unless anyone has a concern, would be allowing our guests from the CPC to jump first on the agenda. They have a quick presentation they wanted to run through, and then we could let them off the hook unless they wanted to attend. Does anyone have a concern with that, or is everyone okay with moving them up? All right. So, but I'm not sure, Alicia, with all the folks in the audience, if everyone's coming for CPC or not. But
could they raise their hand if they are, and I can admit them as a panelist?
Absolutely.
Okay.
All right. Not sure. Thank you for raising your hand. All right, feel free to come off mute. I'm not sure, Carolyn, if that's one. If one of those is you, but oh, there's Carolyn.
Hey, Matt.
Hi. Good evening, everyone.
Good evening. Thanks for joining us. So if it helps, I mean, I can pull up the deck. I had that open that Carolyn had sent to me, unless one of you want to take and share. Whatever's easier for you guys is fine with me. And then you can talk through what you wanted to. All right, hold on, wait. There. All right. Can folks see the PowerPoint?
Yep.
All right. So our esteemed guests from the CPC, feel free to talk through the deck that you want to present to us, and then let me know when you want me to swap slides. But the floor is all yours.
Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you for meeting with us tonight. Like you said, we are been asked to pursue the possibility of increasing in the property surcharge. So just have a little bit of background and some information, and then we can follow up with some discussion and any questions. So next slide, I guess. So just a brief history of CPA for anyone who's not familiar, any committee members or audience participation. In May meeting of 2007, Littleton adopted the Community Preservation Act and established the 1% real estate surcharge that started with fiscal year 2008. And of course, we know that CPA funds projects for open space, historic resources, community housing, and recreational purposes. In November of 2013, we added an industrial and commercial. That was a new part of the legislation, and there's an exemption for the first $100,000 of the real estate or of the assessed value, and we'll talk about exemptions further along. And then in 2014, we adopted the Blended Community Preservation Act for fiscal year 2015, and we'll talk about that a little bit. This is one way that we were going to raise more money for the CPA. If you want to just go to the next slide. So this was just kind of what CPA has accomplished over the years. A number of open space projects, as you can see, a lot of historic resources projects, which are a little bit smaller. A lot of community housing, a lot of repair up at the Pine Tree Park, recreation, which was kind of a new category. that was added a little bit later, and it's not one of the buckets that we have to fund, although Littleton's policy is that we fund it as it is one of the categories. But this was just kind of like for informational, and probably if we go to town, we kind of want to show them what we've been able to do with CPA money. On the next slide. So these are the approximate balances for ending of fiscal year 23. As you can see, it's a little under $1.5 million. Open space, historic resources, the community housing, because we sweep that pretty much every year into the Affordable Housing Trust Fund. Recreation still has a good chunk out there, and the undesignated, which we can split however it needs to be done. That's kind of an open-ended savings account. That also includes some admin funds, which we fund at like 2%, so it's just, just in case. And then at the end of the year, that gets folded into the undesignated fund. But for this purpose, it's all in that 287. So that's what we're dealing with, being fairly fiscally, what's the word? Fiscally not responsible, but not having these huge projects that we normally might have. So the next slide.
Excuse me, Carolyn.
Yes.
Just one question. I'm not sure if this is a question for you or for Alicia, but the community housing money being transferred to the Community Housing Trust. Where can we find a similar kind of report on what the Community Housing Trust is doing with that money?
Yeah, that's one thing that we asked Bartlett to bring with us to us at the end of the year. That's something that they are supposed to give to us. We talked about it. It's coming up in the next couple of months, but they should be able to give us an accounting of what they've used over the year and what they have in the bucket. But
okay.
Maybe Alicia can...
And again, I'm not sure if there's a question for you or not, Carol, but is the Community Housing Trust a totally separate entity, or is it linked to the town so that the town, it would go through town accounting?
It goes through town accounting.
It does go through
Housing Trust. Yep.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Okay. Sorry to short stop you, Carol.
No, that's good. So the next slide. So as I mentioned, we are a blended funds community, and it's interesting. There's only about 5 communities that have taken advantage of this in Massachusetts, and the coalition said that nobody really uses it. We are about the only town that's actually ever used it. But when we enacted the blended community, this allowed for us to augment that 1% surcharge by other municipal revenues up to the equivalent of the 2,000 at the 2%. So community preservation, you can have anywhere from 0 to 3% surcharge on your property tax. Because we're only at 1%, we have 2% left over, and that's what we can cover with the blended funds. So what this extra revenue does is it increases the base for the CPA state matching funds. Additional revenues that we can put in here are mitigation funds, which is mostly what we've done. Hotel occupancy tax, we could put in here. Proceeds of sales of municipal property. Parking fines, probably more for the cities, obviously. Any existing dedicated funds or private gifts, and also free cash. A gift would be like the $200,000 we got from the 242 King Street donation. That would be a private gift that gets earmarked but put in as a blended fund. Next slide. So these figures are getting kind of old now. This is from 2015. Keith Bergman was really the champion for the blended funds. He understood it, and he was really good at kind of looking things that were going on and finding these blended funds. But this kind of illustrates what getting more cash can accomplish. So after we adopted the Blended Funds Act, we had 2 years, the next 2 years, where we maxed out to the 3%. So you can see how the extra 2% can really increase the fund, and you get better return on your investment via the state match. Now here the state match was pretty high, 39%. It's a little bit lower than that, but it has come up in recent years, and that's why we're discussing this.
About what is it running now?
Last year, I think it was 30.3% we got.
Oh, okay, so it's back up. Yeah, that's great.
Yeah. It was down in the 12s, 13s for a while, but it is
right.
good.
Okay.
Next slide, please. So this was just kind of for curiosity. It was part of the slide deck that I took this from. 2 years, if you're curious, 2 years we had host community agreements for Potpourri, the Reed Meadow up on Harvard Road, 15 Great Road, the complex down there, and then the Newtown cell tower payments and some free cash, that $15,942. So these dollar figures are what was on the previous slide. This year, fiscal year 23, we did deposit $437,000 into CPA. It's all earmarked for affordable housing. It was developer contributions from Cooper Farm, Jones Meadow, and Weber Village. So this will all be factored into next year's qualifying rounds. Next slide. So the disadvantages to the blended fund, and this is probably why not many towns are going after them. There's no consistent source for blended funds. It's kind of, you paint a rosy picture with the last couple of slides and the value, but there's nothing we can count on. You need someone to stay on top of what's going on. We don't have anyone dedicated to CPA. Some like Salem has a staff person to help administer this stuff. So you're kind of, relying on town hall people and other committees to find these sources. And then, you can't count on having a continued flow yearly at our disposal. And then any year that we don't collect the full allowable amount, or worse, that we get no extra funds, we lose that state match and the potential additional revenue. Next slide. So is there a solution? Well, we can continue with the blended fund approach, taking a more proactive approach, trying to uncover more sources of revenue. We just talked about some that came in this year, but again, you can't count on it. Obviously, then the or is, implement a 3% surcharge on the property tax, increasing from the current 1%. We could also go anywhere in between. There are towns that have 1.5%. We could have 2, but 3% is the max, and that's, what our starting point is. So this would consistently triple the funds that come into the CPA reserves. The next slide. So looking at other communities, as you can see, as a 1% community, we're roughly with about a third. There's 194 communities right now that have CPA, have adopted it, and every year there are more coming in. 3% is the largest share, but as you can see, not by much. Like if you kind of combine the 0.5 to 0.125, and then you look at like 1.5 and 2 and 3%, it's kind of divided almost equally. But there are a lot of 3% communities out there.
Carolyn, can I ask you a question?
Sure.
When you say 3% is the max, that's the max that the surcharge could be, or that's the max that you could get? So, for example, you said that this year you have funds coming from some of these developments. If we were at 3%, would you not be able to accept those, or could that be above the?
No, you couldn't accept them. 3% is the max. So you either get it all through surcharge, or you get it from a combination of your lower surcharge and blended funds.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. So the next slide.
Actually, can I ask sort of a follow-up to that? in terms of sources, I mean, we can, I seem to recall ages ago, there's a year where we took some money that was in the undesignated fund balance and put it in there because it's, as Fred would say, where else are you going to get 30%?
Mm-hmm.
So you can take, take money there, put it in, and then we're essentially getting more, there's more money across the board without increasing taxes at all.
That's true. You just have to remember that it has to be then, it has to be a CPA eligible project to spend it on. You couldn't do that and then pave a street with it. It would have to be something within the CPA purview. That's right. The only caveat.
Right. But I mean, any money that goes into CPA has to be spent on a CPA project.
You don't have to have a project at the time, though. It can just go into your funds for future projects.
Right, and sit there until something comes up. Yep.
Right, but you could.
And we could put it in.
You could say that 3 years from now, we want to put in pickleball courts, which seems to be the hot item in town. And if we put $50,000 or $100,000 a year in, it got a 30% match on it. At the end of 3 years, you'd have an incremental $80,000 to $100,000 that you didn't have before.
Right. And you could put it into the undesignated bucket, and then you don't have to, handcuff yourself with being in one of the other buckets. We can move stuff around, but it would be easier that way too. Right.
Okay. But to Brian's point, in the past we have used undesignated funds to bump that up. So within the town budget, we have had some movement there. And in fairness to Keith, he was the driver behind a lot of that. He was a master at that.
I don't think we ever, if I can interrupt for a second, I don't think we've ever put undesignated fund balance money into CPC. I think it's been mostly the agreements with the developers and those types of things. Like on this list right here. And this is where the bulk of the money has come from that went in over and above the surcharge. It was for projects like this. Right. So it's part of getting with the planning board as developments come in, whatever agreements are done with the town at that point to designate those dollars to go into CPA. It's
right. I have that down as a note that I think the planning board is sort of a pivotal point for this kind of program to ensure that it may not be totally predictable, but whatever comes through the planning board is at least looked at, help fund this.
Right. But just for clarity, I mean, we are allowed to take our undesignated fund balance and put it towards this blended. Is that's correct?
Well, I think one of the slides talked about that, Brian, right? Was it from free cash?
Yeah.
I'm guessing what certified free cash could go into it.
Right. So I'm just saying that on one hand, increasing the tax surcharge goes against against everyone, and it's a sort of a done deal. Whereas on years where we feel that there are projects coming down the pike that might make sense, and we have some money in our undesignated fund, we could transfer it. So I'm just weighing those two. Right. I'm just thinking about those two different ways of looking at it.
Yeah, it seems like if we knew a project was coming and we had some proactive planning, we could be leveraging that as well as, if there are targets on balances in the different funds, we could kind of, get a feel for, okay, a big project came up and this one's feeling a little bit light, so we can, a couple different ways we could fund it proactively if we're have some targets, right, versus just All right, so sorry, where were we? Sorry, we're jumping around, Caroline. I think this is the one we're on, right?
Okay. Nope, that's all right. I got it. So this was just kind of to illustrate what it might look like. I picked Brewster. They're a 3% community, and so it's basically just for numbers. So fiscal year 22, our 1% surcharge raise was 361,726. So if you triple that, it comes out to roughly 1,011,011. The formula for figuring out the state match it's a little bit of work, and I'm not sure I could explain it to you real quickly off the top of my head, but there are 3 different rounds. So everybody goes through round 1, and you get based on how much you've collected, that's your state match. So last year we got $109,000. Brewster, because of course it's 3 times as much, got $336,000. Because we're only a 1% community, we don't go into the other rounds unless we have blended funds. But Brewster, being a 3% community, does. So they go into round 2. There's a weighted average. What they try to do is get communities, less advantaged communities, to get more of the pot of money. So it depends on a ranking. And I think Brewster is actually at a lower ranking than Littleton, so we would probably get a little bit more in subsequent rounds. And then Brewster got into the 3rd round as well. So the final total distribution, where we stuck with 109,659, Brewster gets those 3 buckets, so it's 416,000. So at the end of the year, they get $1.5 million, while we're still down at less than $500,000. So you can see the 30.3%, that was the state match. And Brewster, because they get the subsequent rounds, gets up to 37. So, I mean, they get, 200% more than we do. And so if we were a 3% community, we would roughly be at that line where Brewster is. So it's just kind of to, get a visual on how much money we'd be getting for the year.
So in 2022, we didn't put much in the way of blended funds in?
No, not for 2022.
Okay.
Next slide, I guess. So what about the taxpayer? This was a real rough calculation. Saul Marini put this together just to kind of show what we would be looking at if we were talking to a taxpayer. Looking at assessed values for the median, average, the 25th and the 15th percentile. So the real estate, we have an exemption, and again, we'll go over those in a second. The first $100,000 on your assessed value. So if you take the assessed value, I've got this written down, minus $100,000, you divide it by 1,000, multiply it by the tax rate, which was 1625, and that real estate tax for that first line would be $6,479. You take 1% of that at $65. That's what your CPA assessment is. If we were at a 3%, you could see it would be $194. So those next 2 columns show the total tax bill with either the 1 or the 3. So your increase for a taxpayer would be about 1.6%. So you are going to triple, a taxpayer's surcharge. And with, property values increasing in Littleton, the burden is going to be higher. And again, a real tax, you guys are the professionals, will have to go through this, but this was just kind of a rough idea so people would have an idea of what would happen.
All right.
And are you taking questions? It looks like you have a hand raised.
Hold on.
Sorry, that was.
I think we're good. That's Tom, right?
No, that wasn't me.
Okay.
Al, can you hear me?
No.
I don't see it. Yeah, I don't see any. Hold on.
Yeah.
Trying to find the hand.
Me?
Al.
Oh, hi, Al. Yeah. Yep, I see you now. Sorry. I didn't have the panelist, the attendee list open. We can hear you, Al. Do you have a question?
Oh, sorry. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, good. The one question I have is just going back to that last slide is the property values have increased. So it's been said a couple times, but seeing an accounting of where all the money is going in detail would be helpful, because with the property values going up, like for example, my house has gone up by over 50% the assessed value. So my taxes have gone up, so you guys have received more money there. And now increasing that from 1% to 3%, you receive even more money. So I would just like to see the accounting, the detail, because you've received an increase through the property values already. So now this is on top of that.
Do you want me to address that, or Tyler, do you want to?
No, I just think before this comes to the town, before we vote as a Fincom to support or not, we would have to see the details.
Okay. Yeah, I think one of the first two slides kind of showed over the years what projects have been have used CPA money. So I mean, we definitely could get you the dollar figures for all those. They're in all the town reports too, because they're voted on at town meeting.
All right, I'm thinking, sorry, I didn't say it the right way. I mean, looking forward on where the money's going to go. What's the plan? Because we have a healthy reserve. And what's the plan going forward with the money? Not what's been spent historically, what the plan is going forward.
Yeah. Yeah, and I guess I kind of a similar question, and I might as well ask it now, right? But I mean, I was curious, are there things that we have not been able to fund in the past because we were only collecting 3%, or we're looking either driving us to the new values? Is there more just to try and capture the additional match?
Well, I think if I can speak for our committee, there are things that we have bonded, like open space purchases. I mean, those are huge, so you might have to bond them anyways. We bonded the roof at the Houghton Memorial Building. So those are projects that we might at some point be able to just pay up front rather than having to borrow against them. I know recreation is the big category that's looking forward. If the Park and Rec Center gets, if they enhance their activities, they may want, bigger and better thing. It's kind of a wish list. Do you want a swimming pool, pickleball courts? Do we need more tennis courts? Playing fields, they always have those in the back of their mind. They're the ones that, a lot of their projects are a lot larger. Community housing, we've always talked about, could we buy a piece of land so that we could buy a piece of land to give it to a developer so that he could build something that's costless for senior housing. So those are the kinds of projects looking forward that, kind of pie in the sky. I see our committee member Mitt may have some further.
Yeah, I saw his hand.
Great.
Go ahead, Mitt.
Thank you. Yeah, I agree with what Carolyn said. I think it might do a little disservice to advocating for revenue to call it, if you don't mind my disagreeing, to call it pie in the sky, because I really think that this would be core funding of balances that would support our being able to be nimble on an ongoing basis, because we've had many meetings where we're really ready to say yes to an applicant, especially with Parks and Recreation, and their project was pulled for another reason. At the time, we would be entertaining a project, but telling them bluntly that we're going to bond this, we can't pay cash, you're going to drain your account, and we're not going to go into undesignated funds disproportionately. We have reserves that are undesignated, but that doesn't represent cash for any applicant for a single project. So some of the projects that they were bringing to us were on a scale that would not only drain their reserves, but would initiate a need for bonding. And then we tell them bluntly, if you come back in 5 years, it might be hard for us to do the next thing. Those types of projects were a bathhouse, pickleball courts, playing fields. If you did all three of those projects, it would take you almost 15 years to roll them out. So I think coming up to 3% allows us to be nimble and to develop savings, especially for costly projects, not just recreation, but really costly projects, so that we're ready to say yes without having to tell applicants, this is your only shot.
Right, because some of those projects are just going to go through either the capital budget or through town budget.
Well, and the question is that necessarily a bad thing? I mean, one of the, and bear with me, I'm not sure where I'm going quite with this. I'm just thinking it out loud, in that when we get capital requests from everybody, we go through a process and we triage, and presumably we do a decent job of figuring out where the limited money should go. So I mean, I think it's good vetting, which is not to say CPA doesn't do good vetting, but it's. I mean, I kind of think big projects should go through the capital process. So, yeah.
I mean, this would be kind of like a bank. You would, be putting money into CPA and getting that state match. I think that's really the big thing here, is that we get that return. And it would just be, like the old funds we used to put money aside for. And then, but you're right. Some of the projects that go through here are really just going through here to get the funds that they can't get through a capital project.
Well, yeah, I guess, I mean, if there was, I guess sticking with Park and Rec and the community center, right? If we knew that community center was in the plans in 5 years or whenever it is, right, then, we could still proactively try and fund it through free cash and have the discussions of priority around what fits under the levy, or whether there's an override for other reasons, right? I mean, just because we can't fit it all in, right? So I think there's, I think this gives us the flexibility to have the bank, whether we're thinking about it or not, right? Which is not necessarily a bad thing, but it's that, it shouldn't take away, what we should all be doing for planning, right? I mean, I think that's, where we struggle and talk a lot as a board is just the 5-year plan, and just because you can fit things into the levy doesn't mean it's free, right? It's all trade-offs like this would be, right? I mean, it's but come the end of the day, it comes to the will of voters on what they feel is important, and where they feel the priorities and decisions should be coming from. I do have one curiosity thing for myself, and then we'll finish through the slides and go through more. Right? But you had mentioned right at the start that that CPC had been requested to look into increasing the match, or was that asked kind of came from CPC itself, or was there a board that came to a meeting and kind of requested CPC consider it? I know there's representation from a lot of boards, on CPC, so I'm just curious.
I mean, we've talked about it once in a while. We think about it and say, gee, is this the time? Is this the time? But I think it's because of the increase in the state match, and the town has kind of asked us to, we were going to say, all right, we'll think about it. Maybe next year we'll look at it. But they've kind of asked us to speed up that process. But I think it's partly because of that return on investment.
And if I could chime in too, Carolyn,
yeah,
it's still for capital projects, even with CPC funding, they're still vetted. So we still vet them. We just tell them that they need to apply if they're eligible for CPC funding. So not only do they have to go through the capital process through the town, but then they have to go to the CPC to see if their project is eligible. So it's not like they're sideswiping the capital process.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think
Sorry,
just in terms of, this would need obviously a town meeting vote. And I think, portraying it as, a permanent increase in taxes is going to compound is going to be potentially a pretty hard sell, as opposed to saying, Fincom and the finance team will each year look to see if we're in a position where we can put some money aside to get the match. And then we take it on that we actually do look, because you're right. I mean, not getting the match is silly, but I think this year, I don't know. I think this year with everything we're asking the town, with what people see coming down the pike, I think asking for permanent increase in taxes is going to be a very hard sell.
Yeah.
So, and sorry, Kelly, just to follow back on my last question, just to, I guess, get a little more specific. I mean, was it particularly town departments or a town board or town administration? I guess I just you're trying to.
Yeah, town administration.
Okay, thanks.
So this slide here is the exemptions, just to let people know, because some people don't realize that we do have, we've kind of maxed out on the exemption categories. We exempt the first $100,000 of assessed value, and that's both for residential and commercial properties. We also have an exemption for low-income residents, and that's based on HUD area-wide median income figures. There are exemptions that homeowners for age 60 and older can apply for. Those have to be applied for. The town website, I noticed, isn't up to date with the wage figures, but they're actually fairly generous if someone is in that category. And these exemptions, we wouldn't propose to change, I don't think. And as you can see, we're in that blue section. So most of them don't have, I think it's the, I can't really see, I think it's the commercial exemption, but we did vote that in. And we voted it in, it was more to help small businesses. I mean, IBM wasn't going to really gain much from 100,000, but a small business, a sub shop or something would gain from that. So you can see we're in kind of the second biggest pie slice there, but I can't imagine that we would ask any changes on that. So the next slide is just, this is our proposal. Well, this is the proposal. This is the starting point for us, is to increase the property surcharge to 3%. We would not have the blended fund option after that. We would keep all the exemptions as we just talked about. And this is kind of on us. Some towns have a community preservation plan which outlines goals like what we were just talking about, of areas for CPA. I know AIR has done one, and it's a fairly simple plan, but I think it would be something that we should probably put on our table for this year, because I think that would help kind of guide the use of funds, especially if we go up to 3%, whether through the surcharge or through the blended funds. So that's kind of the next slide. Just says, discussion, next steps. Where do we go from here? Do we want to continue to explore increasing the surcharge, or do we want to, make it a plan that we try to augment with blended funds rather than?
It is in an either or with the blended funds. Right now, we're 1% and up to 2% blended funds. Is it possible to say, we'll continue to try to fill the extra 2% with blended funds, but if we fall short, we could collect the rest from the taxpayer? So in a down year, the taxpayer would pay a little more. In an up year, the taxpayer would pay a little less. And I don't know. It's just an off the wall thought. And I don't know how you really manage that either. But it would get you the 3% or close to it without continually having that 3% override, and that's what the surcharge is. It's an override. Continually be there. I don't know.
It's an either or. So either you have the 3% or you do the blended. You can't have it as 3% one year and blended another.
No, but even the same, if you only collect 2%, if we only get 1% blended and we do an extra 1% on the tax rate, is there a way to do that? Because right now we've got 1% plus up to 2% on blended.
That's what you can do. You can do up to 2% on the blended to get up to a max of 3%.
Well, right. Alicia, yeah, I think he's asking, can we go to 2% on the tax rate and then have a 1% blended, right, to still get the 3?
Yeah, you can. You can do that. Yep.
Yeah.
All right. Hey, Anna, I see your hand up. Oh, sorry, Fred. Go ahead.
No, go ahead. I'm done. Good.
Anna, did you have something? I saw your hand up.
Hi. Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes. Yep.
Great. So I wanted to go back to a question that was, or a comment that was brought up earlier about about little to not being able to fund this last year. And so I wanted to ask, what's the trigger for the town adding in the blended funds? Maybe I missed that part of it, but what triggers happen or didn't happen to be able to allow the blended funds to either go in or not?
Having blended funds available, I would say that would be number one. There are no consistent outside sources to boost the blended funds every single year. The HCA seemed to be the driver that was driving that up to 3% in the past.
Okay. All right. And so
every year that gets bigger because when the tax rate goes up, when more houses are built, even it's more that 2% is more money than we've collected the year before.
Okay. But at what point in the cycle do we have to know? Like, so you collect the 1%, that's a fixed number, and then you have projects that might be paying in through builders or whatever, and then at some point in the year you have like a new total, and now we have a number that we're short. Like, when does that missing number that would need to be blended, become available so that if we wanted to put it in the budget or something? Does that make sense?
Yeah, it's just within the fiscal year, right, Alicia? It's whatever you've collected during the fiscal year as the fiscal year ends.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Anyone else have any other questions on this for now?
One more quick question from me,
Sure.
Al Rasmus. I'm trying to understand if somebody was going to request money, does this? So say there was a large capital request to get pickleball courts, and it's $200,000. Does that need to go in front of the town to get approved before the community preservation fund get allocated to it, or does that get approved by the community preservation committee?
The community preservation committee makes a recommendation which goes before the town.
Right.
Okay, so it would still need to be approved by the town, and if the town said no, then the funds would not come out of CPC.
Correct.
Right. Yeah. It's a regular town meeting article every year. Alan, Nate, you had your hand up.
Yes. Was just I think as a next step we should be able to make present the history better, be able to answer how we've used blended funds in the past, because as I recall, it's more rare than the norm. It's a great point of discussion, and I like Brian's question, inviting us to think about the capital process and what is really our philosophical approach here. That's a healthy discussion to have. As we're before other townspeople, I think it would be helpful to be able to answer the history question more in detail. I think it might be misrepresented a little tonight to think that historically we've used a lot of blended funds. Largely, we haven't the threshold, and we haven't really benefited from that a whole lot.
I think it would be good to see maybe the last 4 years of data. We're looking at 19 15, 16, 17 data.
Yeah.
And I think the story might be better told with data from the last 3 or 4 years.
Yeah, I think something, I mean, obviously this would be a conversation, during the rest of the budget process and then for town meeting, right? But I think, the vision for how this would positively affect the town, I think will be important too, right? And maybe working with town administration on, okay, here's the 10-year capital priorities over the next 10 years, and here's how CPC could more cost effectively fund some of those initiatives to kind of paint that vision and paint why it would be financially advantageous for the town to embrace something like this. I think that would be, that would be a pretty important part of conversation. Brian, I see your hand up.
Yeah, just to Al's comment that, yeah, it does have to go through town meeting, but we typically have viewed the discussion and triage among the capital projects as pretty darn separate from the discussion and triage of the CPC projects. Whereas they're really, what do we want to do with all the money the town has? So yes, it's a vote, but I feel like it's not, I don't know. I guess I'd love to have us to have a bigger discussion about that, because it's more like when we're discussing the CPC projects, it's like, hey, do we like these projects? It's, and whereas I think we do a lot more triage on the big town side. But that's just my thought.
Yeah. Gary?
I guess I just don't understand, or didn't phrase my question right, but I guess I'm just wondering, can we, on a particular year, if we want to max out to get the full match, whether we increase the surcharge sum or not, once we know if there's going to be any other funds put in there, can we do like I know we can take it from free cash or whatever, but when would we know, like at the end of the year, the cycle, what that dollar amount would be if we wanted to set some aside for that to maximize the match? Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Does to me.
Yeah. When do you know what your surcharge on your real estate tax, what figure that's going to be?
No. Well, you know what you're going to collect, say for fiscal year 23, you know what you're going to get in surcharge. And then you don't know exactly what pieces you're going to be getting from these developments, because I'm assuming that they pay on certain times in their projects. So at some point before that year is over, maybe you've collected some blended funds, but not enough to reach that full match. We could put money in from free cash or from something to get you up to that, but we'd have to know what that amount was to be able to maximize that. You know what I mean?
Right. And you'd have to know by town meeting, because it has to be voted on at town meeting.
Right. So we have to figure out who was going to actively kind of manage and understand that and be the next Keith, right? I mean, I guess that goes back to the point of being successful with him and probably not really thought about now if you're talking about ECAs and things like that.
Do you submit like your numbers to be able to get your match? So when's your deadline when you submit that information?
When we close.
At the end of our fiscal year?
Yeah.
Okay.
And then the state does their own calculation based on collections, based on the size of your community.
Okay, so when we come to the May town meeting, we virtually always have a special which addresses pre-June 30th issues. So if we were able to understand if CPC was going to have a shortfall, at that time we could look to see if we have funds available to bump that up to ensure that CPC is closer to the 3% match. So I think the calendar.
That's exactly what I'm asking.
I think the calendar could work that way. It would just be a guesstimation on what happens between the first week in May when we have town meeting and June 30th, right?
You're muted.
Sorry, I was saying, yeah, sorry about that. Steve, you had your hand up, and then we'll probably close this agenda item up and try and move on to the rest of the night. But Steve, go ahead.
That kind of answer Fred's question. I mean, you'd have to know now because we're in the budget process now, and this is where we're allocating the funds. So it's allocating what we have now and putting some aside. I think the bigger issue is
it's allocating 2023 funds. At the end of the year, we're always doing gymnastics with funds. And it would seem to me that we could add CPC into one of those gymnastic meet events. And if they're short by 50,000, can we find it to turn that 50,000 into 70,000? So
I don't think necessarily at the end of each year you can count on a large amount of dollars being available. It's basically just housekeeping. At least at that point in time, it's just housekeeping things, covering deficits from transfers from other funds and things like that at that special. I think the bigger question is having an advocate at town hall.
Absolutely.
In the town administrator's office or the finance director or somebody who realizes when these projects are happening that could be sending in funds to the town and realizing that maybe those funds could be put into CPA. I mean, that's the thing. So, the town could be taking in some funds and it just winds up going to the general fund or funding some other thing. But if there's a mandate from, Fincom and the selectmen to put this top of mind, like Keith used to do, basically, is making sure that we put any of these funds aside specifically for CPC. I think that's what's been missing in the past few years after Keith left, basically, is having that advocate that thinks of that as the first use of those funds instead of something else.
So I just wanted to highlight that. I thought Saul had his hand up under attendees. Oh, there he is again. So I just wanted to highlight that other folks might have their hands up in the attendee column. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Alicia. Hey, Solomon, did you have something to add?
Yeah, sorry, thanks. Yeah, I mean, sorry, I've been listening and I was tied up a little at the beginning, but I guess I just wanted to take maybe a slightly different approach of, we've talked about this as adding to the tax burden, but if we're being smart about the use of these funds, and as Brian said, going through sort of the same process of allocating capital, which I think makes sense to still give good thought to how we're going to use our capital, that really this is just a way of being more efficient with our funds to get that state match. We still want to, we're not going to do sort of extravagant things because we're setting aside this money. It's potentially a way to use the money more effectively on things that we were going to do anyway. So if we were going to do it from the general fund, this is a more efficient way of doing it, not something that we can necessarily do things that we wouldn't otherwise do.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, I think, I think for us or for me at least, right? I mean, that's what would sell me and what would let us kind of make look at it as kind of, why this is a good financial, decision for the town, right? If it can show cost savings on projects that are priorities on a 10-year cap plan and show that it's more cost effective to fund it this way versus, versus borrowing or banning or whatever, right? I mean, I think that's how we build them. That's how you would help, build a model to show the value of the taxpayers, embracing something like this. Another good next step. I'm not sure. I mean, have you presented kind of this to the select board yet? I mean, that obviously would be, or were your first stop on the tour?
Yeah, you're our first stop. I just kind of wanted to gauge how you guys felt about it and what you're thinking. Because if we could, do it through blended funds, obviously that would be the less painful way for the residents of Littleton.
Well, I think either way it comes down to planning, right? I mean, so then even, we're looking to get some more visibility into the updated 10-year capital plan and things too as a finance committee, right? So that when we're looking at things like Indian Hill and all the rest of it, we're looking at it in the context of the 10-year plan, right? I think this would fall right into that same thing, right? If we have that and working with town administration and Alicia and finance on that stuff, that's how we can kind of paint the vision of here's all the stuff on the list. Here's how we can fund it effectively and really have a solid conversation around why it makes sense. All right. Thank you.
Carolyn, are you scheduled with the selectmen yet?
No, we aren't yet. This is, like I say, this is the first stop. So we could do that after, if that's what you think we should do next and see how they feel about it. Is that the...
Okay.
Yeah, I definitely think that would make a lot of sense, right? I mean, I think for sure, something we can talk about more as we're going through finalizing the budget process with them. We'll have a number of more joint meetings, but I think that is definitely the appropriate next stop.
Okay, we take some of the suggestions we got tonight and enhance the presentation a bit.
Great.
Thank you.
All right, well, thank you all very much for coming and joining us tonight.
Discussion.
Yeah, it's a good discussion. So, all right, Alicia, on to the finance director update and discussion around special town meeting articles. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to start with the fiscal 2024 budget, showing the 24 departmental requests when we had the almost $1.7 million deficit to the balanced budget at $63,688,120. I projected local aid cherry sheet at 1%. We're still waiting on the governor's budget due March 1st. Health insurance is projected at 9%, the national average. Maya has it ranging anywhere from 5 to up to 10%. We were about 5% last year. We're still waiting to find out what that is for the spring. Neshoba Valley Technical High School assessment is $3,155, less than what we estimated. And the Essex Tech High School, the student matriculated, so the $28,500 we have budgeted is actually available to be programmed.
Excuse me, Alicia.
Yes.
Went to the Neshoba Tech breakfast last week, and Superintendent Pidgeon's presentation, she mentioned a number of times that she expects that her numbers will change when the governor's budget comes out. So I would expect to see some different number, whether it's good to the good or the bad, from the tech after the 1st of March.
Thank you for letting me know that, Fred.
Yeah.
Just making a note of it. Okay. And for fiscal year 2024, we have some unfunded requests by departments. $8,000 from me for Munis PACE training. It's for town-wide Munis training since we're upgrading to a new version of Munis and we're changing our chart of accounts. I think it would be very vital for the town to have this online training that anybody can use anytime. $25,000 for part-time admin assistant for human resources. That was cut. They want to have that reprogrammed back out of the human resources reserves account. $86,812 in benefits for LCTV. They've requested their benefits be covered by the town. $3,834 plus benefits were projected at about $25,000 for the plumbing inspector through the building department, moving them from 18 to 20 hours, making them benefits eligible. 4,637 plus benefits of 25,000 for the assistant conservation agent, moving their hours from 19 to 22 hours. $2,000 for the creation of a sustainability committee, the select board, and $167,959 for the creation of a health department, and this excludes benefits. Now moving on to the I can go
Alicia, if you could just I mean, we all got an email from Kevin Baker kind of end of week last week, right? And then he followed up with me and the chair of the select board earlier today. But do you know, is that an agenda item for the select board for discussion at any future meetings, or is that going to be scheduled just kind of after? I just don't know what next discussions are scheduled around that particular one. I know there's some potential time urgency there.
I have not been involved in that, Tyler, with the town administrator. I can circle back with the town administrator's office, but I know that they wanted to have further discussion about that.
Okay.
But I don't have details or exacts on any of that.
All right, that's fair. Yeah, just that's obviously, I mean, a lot we need to talk about after the special, but that potentially is one that sooner rather than later. Okay, thanks.
Okay. Any other questions?
On that same item, it's not $168,000. You did notice that it, quote, excludes benefits.
Yes.
When the selectmen discuss it, they should be discussing it with benefits, so that the numbers that were presented in the memo show that it pays for itself. And when you plug benefits in, it doesn't pay for itself. So I think they should have the total picture when they're discussing it. So if you could pass that along to Anthony as well, which will probably bounce back to you for what the benefits number is. But I think, that they should, if they're going to discuss it, they should discuss the full picture and not present something that's sort of half of the story.
Yeah, and Fred, I don't believe we've seen, I mean, I know there was in that document we got, but I don't think we've seen kind of what the revenue planning or what actually leads to that. I think it was $179,000 in revenue, right? I don't think I've seen that.
So, yeah, but just a watch out, that's all.
Okay.
All right. Moving on. Thanks, Alicia.
Okay. Now on to the fiscal year 24 capital improvement plan. I know at our joint meeting, you wanted to see the layout of the 10 years. So here I'm showing the 10 years out. So we can see the funding that we had available versus the shortfall in the years forward. Any questions on this slide?
Give me a sec.
No problem.
So it's only money.
Yeah. Well, no. So while folks are absorbing this, I mean, Alicia, one thing that would be really helpful for me and probably for others is, I mean, ideally before, but if after you could share this when we can't share before, I think having this stuff to refer back to is, I have trouble remembering, so that'd be really helpful.
Absolutely. I'll share this PowerPoint with everybody after the meeting.
And I do have a question. So do I read that in FY27 $31 million presumably for New Shaker Lane? Is that what I'm reading?
Yeah, 30 million is in there for Shaker Lane. Yes, you are correct, Brian.
Okay, I think that's the first time I've heard anyone dare to say a number.
That's an estimate.
Well, yeah, it's the first time anyone said a number other than, yeah, it might need 10 million in renovation or something.
Well, yeah, Brian, I think that's some of the visibility we've been missing not this year, right? Last year we had the 10-year cap plan that had all that in that, and we haven't had that this year. So thanks, Alicia, for sharing it today. But I think that's definitely where you're probably seeing some of the stuff for the first time that we haven't seen for a year,
Right. I mean,
that we should be seeing more regularly.
Yeah, I mean, just looking at the schools in 24, that's 5 million, 26, 2 million, then 31 million, then $1.5 million. It's like pretty soon we're talking real money.
Well, I mean, Park and Rec in fiscal 26, right? I mean, I'm assuming that's the community center with the pool, right? So that's another big number there.
Oh, good Lord. Sorry.
Yep.
You missed that one.
And how does, again, is that a typo? But Park and Rec has $3.5 million on 24 and 25?
Yes.
What is that for? Do we know?
I'm opening up their Excel.
Oh, okay. Sorry. No. Wow. And just looking at these shortfall numbers, the numbers in red, good God.
Well, right. And
my only comment on this is...
Sorry, I stepped on someone.
I'm sorry, I was just saying my only comment on this is to see how does it impact the debt service going forward? Is it going to be in the levy, outside the levy? Because it's just going to be more impact, assuming all of this gets approved, right?
Yep.
And voted in. Seeing how it impacts the debt service going forward is important to see, because I'm guessing a lot of this is going to have to go outside the levy.
Well, yeah, Alvin, I think that goes to the whole, and I'll keep revisiting it, the free is free conversation, right? I mean, we're, fiscal 24, the plan has us set 7.8, we're funding 1.7, right? So we have $6 million that's going to roll into future fiscal years, right? It's not like that number is going away, right? So, that'll just move out to fiscal 25 and beyond. So,
Right, but it does. We are going to have to do some education about inside the levy isn't free. I mean, I was telling my wife, it's like, hey, I've got this great proposal. Let's cut $1 million a year from schools, police, and fire, and then we can build 100 pickleball courts for free. It's like, no, inside the levy isn't free.
So the first large one is that exactly that, the community center with the pool. They put a large initial estimate and then the big money 2 years out. And then they also put in the following year a new field creation, and that's big money.
So like 22 million over 3 years.
Yeah, but I mean, if just looking at this document, right? If you take the negatives, out for fiscal 24, that we're not funding and roll through. I mean, we're negative $56 million underfunded, right? I know that's it won't all just come out of cap. We'll have to borrow for the schools and things like that. But I mean, it's not like it's not a small number that we have in the cap plan that we don't have a funding source as of today, right?
Right. So on my next slide, I'm showing on the 10-year, you can see the bonds, free cash, general fund, grants, just the different funding sources by dollars. So you can see the total for 10 years is $73.8 million.
So we just lay this on top of Steve's graph that he sent out this afternoon.
Steve, you're never going to be able to retire.
And here is the $9.5 million capital request, just broken out by funding type, with the biggest chunk being the 7.4 in bonds. And then on to the sheet that we've been looking at, which is the capital request submitted by departments versus the town administrator finance director recommendations for the different projects. So we can see the cemetery truck. We removed historical gravestone preservation, we left, and that could be CPC funding, so that was left there. Administrative building needs assessment, that was left. for $25,950 for the cemetery to come out of their cemetery perpetual trust care fund. The zero-turn mower was delayed. We said okay to the SUV. We're recommending a hybrid for the DPW. Delaying the feasibility study, the infill groomer added the irrigation wells for $65,000. Fire department, delaying the fire prevention officer vehicle, but funding the ambulance replacement for $415,000. LCTVs using their receipts reserved for appropriation PEG funds for fiber upgrades and archival. And the planning department for zoning bylaw, diagnostic, and recodification for $32,000. Any questions on this slide before I go to the next one?
Can you back up one slide? And
sure.
The capital plan. I thought it was
back more.
No, right there. It's fire department. We've got the ambulance in 24, and then we've got 715 in 27.
Yes.
Is that a truck or is that another ambulance?
Another ambulance.
At 7. Wow. Okay. So, and then there's another ambulance out in 30.
Correct.
Right. But theoretically, some of that's going to be covered by ambulance receipts.
Correct.
Right.
Right. And sorry, Fred, are you done? So okay. just one thing I have to observe. For a couple of months now, I've been saying stuff about some of these projects, and it's like, oh my God, Shaker Lane. And I feel like for a couple of months, people have been saying, oh, Brian, that's so far in the future. We don't have to worry about that. And it's like, I'm seeing it in column 4, $31 million. So when people, I think when people tell me don't worry about it, that's off in the future, I'm not going to believe it.
Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thanks.
All right, for the police department, the camera and security system, we said to fund at $200,000. The chief said that's conservative. It's actually less than that, so that's why we decreased it from $250 to $200. The cruiser replacement plan funded at $140,000, and the tasers was put in the police budget for $10,409 per year. For parks and recreation, the Club 420 sailboats, we said for them to pay out of the revolving fund. They actually were able to get those much cheaper than $50,000 and have already acquired those sailboats. The community center pool, we did not recommend. The Long Lake dock replacement, we did not. We pushed off, staying with the new field creation. Replacement of a 2011 Ford Ranger pickup truck. We said is okay. We're looking at that as an electric vehicle that they could possibly share with the land use department. The resurfacing of the basketball course at 300 King Street, we delayed. But as the town administrator spoke, there is extra funding from an outside source that they could possibly utilize for that. Littleton Public Schools, concrete sidewalk repairs for the schools, we recommended for $71,000. Furniture replacement, central office floor replacement, fix alumni field lighting, high school rooftop, HVAC unit, we said yes. High school roof, $4 million. We gave $50,000 for a feasibility study. High school floor, bottom floor only. High school tennis courts reconfiguration for $200,000. We said yes if they can get the LELWD grant. Library folding wall replacement deferred, swing set replacement, Shaker Lane and Russell Street. And we came up with a facility improvements, furniture, floors, play, little structures. We gave them $100,000 and the schools can prioritize their projects as needed. Then under the select board, the purchase of Indian Hill. We had that at 4.2. That was their asking price. Came back at 3.5, which they accepted. The $657,000 we were going to program there, we are now going to put into capital stabilization. So total in the general fund is $10,409. Bond for the ambulance, $415,000. Grants of $209,950. Trust and pay funds of $48,000. Revolving funds of $50,000, which they've already taken care of. Free cash of $1.7 for a total of $2,433,359 for the capital plan.
And is there any earmark on the 657 going into stabilization, or is that just in the general fund to up for grabs going forward?
That's just earmarked to go into the capital stabilization.
Okay.
Yeah, just I noticed in the email that Steve sent out earlier, we were financing the 3.5 million. But if we're moving money to the cap fund it's not earmarked for Indian Hill, but in this line it's for Indian Hill, we should probably move that financing down to 2.9, not 3.5.
The problem with that, Al, is we're purchasing the property first week of March if it passes the town meeting, and the 657 doesn't become available to town meeting in May.
Can we add a comment over that it'll be moved over afterwards? Just because I don't want to spend 3.5 because my worry is that 657 will then be used for something else.
Mm-hmm.
Well, but it's up to us to decide what it's used for.
Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah. And I think, we didn't discuss at all, prioritization or whether, with the select board, whether we were going to remove, add anything to the plan, right? So, I think unless anyone feels super strongly about more discussion on this, we're going to have to revisit it after the special, and then we'll know the fate of Indian Hill and be able to get into a much more detailed conversation around exactly what the cap plan is going to look like. So, if anyone has more questions, that's great. But otherwise, let's keep on chunking through because we still have to get through all the special time meeting articles tonight.
Yeah, I think that's fair. That's fair.
Have we seen the fit out numbers? Not that anybody knows what they are yet, but they're going to have to come from somewhere.
So Fred, I can speak to that briefly, right? And Alicia, if you had anything else, but I did, seeing that there was the open house that we were all invited to for Indian Hill, and there were some specific plans around pickleball and the refurbishment of courts, and the two additional tennis courts. I did ask if there was going to be any subsequent financial information that we should consider as a board prior to the special town meeting, and the answer from town administration was that the sole item around Indian Hill outside the purchase of it itself was a $200,000 kind of donation for at least you want to go back up to that item, the $200,000 for, I think it was for refurbishing existing or adding those two additional.
Yep, right here.
Yeah, so that's the only detail that they'll have prior to the special town meeting around. Nothing for refit, that $200,000, and so I think we're gonna not have a whole lot more detail in the purchase price, Fred.
No, that's fine, but you can't do much in the municipal world for $200,000. So,
right, and that's just the tennis court we can say, right? That's not fit out at all.
By the time I don't know whether they'll have reasonable numbers by the May town meeting or not, but. That's just a watch out going forward. No sense of buying the barn if we're not going to use it.
Right. We're just not going to know the cost of the stalls and the horses next week.
Yep.
Okay. Any more questions on the capital plan before I go on to special town meeting?
Nope.
Okay. I left the same categories up again. That's all this is. All right, so here is the special town meeting articles. I'm just going to go over the financial articles 1, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8.
Alicia, before you jump into them, I think rather than revisiting, if the board feels comfortable, the committee feels comfortable, I would suggest that we make a motion on those, we want to make a recommendation as we're going through them, right? Just so we're not, having to revisit it all at the end. Is anyone opposed to that? All right, go ahead.
I'm sorry. So you want us to vote our yay or nay on all the articles, or sorry, I didn't understand.
Well, no. So I mean, I think for those that the board feels comfortable making a recommendation on, let's do that as we're going through. I guess specific to Indian Hill, my thought, and I'll share it now, and we'll talk more. Right, that there's obviously a lot of substance and conversation to be had on that. The select board has not yet made a recommendation on that article, so my preference or thought would be to wait until the select board has decided to recommend or not recommend that article before we take a position on it. But again, we can discuss that when we get to that item. But I think the rest we can get through fairly quickly, and then see where we want to go with number 7.
Okay. I think our recommendation is and should be completely independent of select board. So I think we can go through, but we should vote what we think regardless of what they think.
I put a note, I hope it's not too forward, but I got that invite that was an opening for the board to visit on Saturday, Indian Hill. So I wrote on that slide recommendation forthcoming after in case you wanted to attend that. I wasn't sure, so I wrote that on the slide. So I hope that's all right.
Okay. Yeah. All right. Well, let's just step through them, Brian. Then when we get to 7, we can see, what the will of the committee of everyone is, right?
Sure.
Okay. So the first Article 1 on bills of prior year, we have some fiscal year 22 legal service bills and some prior year veterinary service bills that were overlooked that need to be paid. There were no purchase orders in place, and per Mass General Law, Chapter 44, Section 64, if we don't have monies in place from the prior year and we're paying with current year funds, we have to vote to pay those funds.
So moved.
Second.
All right. So moved and seconded that the Finance Committee recommends support of Article 1 for the special town meeting. All in favor? Roll call vote, sorry, since we are, roll call since we are on Zoom. Fred?
Aye.
Brian?
Aye.
Tom?
Aye.
Al?
Aye.
Jerry?
Aye.
And I'm an aye as well.
Okay. Article 3, the PRCE reprogram and rescind the PRCE enterprise fund. So what this vote is doing is rescinding the free cash vote we made at special town meeting and instead appropriating $463,000 of their retained earnings so that they can spend down their entire fund. At which point, at the end, in June 30th, we're going to revoke the provisions of Chapter 44, Section 53F.5 to cease their PRC enterprise fund, and then they will go on to using the revolving fund that was started and created last May.
So they were a revolving fund, and we put them on an enterprise fund, and now we're putting them back on a revolving fund.
Yes. They should have never been an enterprise.
And is there a legal reason to do this?
Yes, they're not self-sustaining. They could not be self-sustained.
Okay.
So moved.
Yep. Second.
All right. So we have a motion and a second that the Finance Committee supports Article 3 at the special town meeting. I'll keep everyone's names up. Roll call vote. Brian?
Aye.
Fred?
Aye.
Tom?
Aye.
Al?
Aye.
Jerry?
Aye.
Aye. And I am a yes as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Article 4 is amending the fiscal year 23 LCTV Receipts Reserved for Appropriation Fund by $2,297. This is due to the special town meeting vote on the new classification compensation salary, the table that was voted on and accepted. It increased LCTVs, non-union employees, and this $2,297 would cover that increase.
Anyone have questions on Article 4?
I'll move the question.
All right. We have a motion to recommend Article 4. Can I get a second?
Second.
All right.
Sorry, Tom, beat you to
vote. It. Roll call vote. Tom?
Aye.
Alvin?
Aye.
Gary?
Aye.
Fred?
Aye.
Brian?
Aye.
And I'm in favor as well.
Thank you. Article 5 from the Board of Water Commissioners is for LELWD to amend the fiscal year 23 sewer enterprise operating budget by $92,000 to pay bond anticipation note interest. And this was due May 17th, 2023. So in other words, when they made their budget, they just didn't include this debt service in their budget. So this is adding the money they need in order to pay their debt service that's coming due.
So what happens if this article doesn't pass?
Then we don't have the money to pay the debt service. Not good for Steve. Not good for me.
They have the money, they just didn't have it in the budget.
Right. And it's coming out of their retained earnings. It's coming out of the sewer enterprise.
They have the cash, yeah.
This was a borrowing that Sean did just before he left. And I guess the communication between the town hall and the water department wasn't very good. So they weren't really aware that this payment was due May 17th. So we calculated what the interest was going to be. They can take it out of their retained earnings, but push comes to shove, it's the town's responsibility anyways, because we're the only user of the sewer department right now. So
this is incremental to the $400,000 budget that they have.
Correct.
Okay. So moved.
Second.
All right. So we have a motion and a second from the Finance Committee to recommend Article 5 at the special town meeting. Roll call vote. Alvin? Al?
Aye.
Brian?
Aye.
Tom?
Aye.
Gary?
Aye.
Fred?
Aye.
Right. And I'm an aye as well.
Thank you. Article 6 is to amend the fiscal year 23 Community Preservation Fund budget. This one's needed because in November we actually voted percentages because we were not sure of the state match. In our annual town meeting in May of last year, we did an estimated state match, which was more than what the actual match was. And it was included in the percentages that were voted back then, which was 40% open space, 18 historic, 20 housing, 20 for rec, and 2% for the admin, which is now changed to 30%. The match now portion has changed to 30% open space, 15% historic, 15% housing, 15% recreation, and 25% undesignated. So we need to reduce our original appropriated amount from $578,989 to $540,873, and then by the percentages, I have each bucket. So open space from $231,595 to $202,419. Historic from $104,218 to $93,178. Community housing reserve from $115,798 to $101,209. Recreation reserve from $115,798 to $101,209. General reserve, which had zero, is now $34,827. And admin from $11,580 to $8,031.
Did they have a reason to put money into the general reserve, Alicia, or?
No, they just voted it that way.
Okay.
Gives them more flexibility with their projects.
Okay.
All right. Any questions on Article 6 for Alicia?
I'll move it.
Second.
So we have a motion and a second that the Finance Committee recommends Article 6, amendment of the fiscal 23 CPC budget at special town meeting next week. Roll call vote. All in favor. Tom?
Aye.
Jerry?
Aye.
Fred?
Oh no, you had it all figured.
Fred, did I hear you, Fred? I wasn't sure. Heard something.
That wasn't me yelling in the background. Aye.
All right, Al?
The background noise is me. Aye.
All right. And I missed someone. Was it Jerry? Did I miss you, Jerry?
Brian.
I missed somebody.
Aye.
Brian. Okay, sorry, Brian. All right. And I'm an aye as well.
Thank you.
Go in the same order so I remember.
So Article 7 is the purchase of Indian Hill Music School at 32 and 36 King Street with $30.5 million borrowing. And then I just said the next slide displays the Indian Hill open house. And I put recommendations will be delayed after the open house. So I wasn't sure if your honorable body wanted to attend the open house on Saturday before making a recommendation.
I do.
Yeah. Alicia, can we go through the rest of the articles and then we'll come back to this one?
Yeah,
if everyone's so inclined. Was it the last one?
Yep, after this is Article 8, which is a reprogram. Do you want to go to the Article 8?
Yeah, let's do Article 8 and then we'll go back to 7 if 8's the last one.
Okay. Article 8, we're rescinding and reprogramming prior capital town meeting warrant articles, which I listed on the right. We're transferring $336,693.88 for various capital projects for buildings under the care and custody and control of the select board for the work that is included to be feasibility studies, design, construction. We're rescinding the unspent balance of $22,600 from the May 7, 2018 Article 8 Town Offices Meeting Room 307 Upgrades Capital Project back to the LCTV Receipts Reserved for Appropriation Paid Fund. We're rescinding the unspent balance of $68,550 from the May 1st, 2017 Article 8 Mill Pond Dredging Capital Project. $20,000 from the May 6, 2019 Article 8 Lake.
Can we stipulate that you don't have to read those?
Oh, great. Thank you. It makes me even better. Thank you, Brian.
I stipulate.
Good idea, Brian. Thank you.
So
I agree.
This is just us reprogramming and resending the funds per our financial policy.
I think different than how we've done this sometimes in the past, right, is that this is letting it roll to control the select board for certain uses versus going back to free cash, correct, Alicia? It's a little bit different than what we've done in a lot of cases.
Correct, because there's so many projects, I think, coming on board and upgrades and feasibility studies that they'd rather use the money for that instead of borrowing coming back. They want to just repurpose those old capital project funds for needed projects that are coming about right now.
So this is going into capital stabilization?
No, let's go. So these old projects are now going to go into one project.
What one project?
Mm-hmm. Except for where you see number 2, it has like certain amounts. Some of them are going back to water enterprise that came out of water enterprise. The 22.6 that came out of receipts reserved for appropriation pay access is going back. Otherwise, the rest of them are going to go into a special project line for them to do feasibility studies, design, construction for various projects under the control of the select board.
I don't recall another time when the select board got their own pot of money to. Yeah. I mean, if this was going straight to cap stabilization, I think that would be awesome. And I understand that Anthony has a little emergency pool for sort of a quick reaction fund. But putting, $350,000 just under the control of the select board seems, I don't recall us doing that before.
The stipulations, Brian, are under number 1 in the article.
Mm-hmm.
For the purpose of funding various capital projects for buildings under the care, custody, and control of the select board, the work may include, but it's not limited to, feasibility studies, design, and construction. So this is the money that is intended to be used to look at Indian Hill, for example, some of this money to look at what needs to be done as far as the improvements to the building once it's moved in, and anything that still needs to be done to town hall, because we still have to maintain this building. So that's
right.
That's what I understand the funds will be used for.
Right. The thing is, Steve, if you look at the sentence, the work may include, but is not limited to, which means the work can be anything. That's what the sentence says.
Mm-hmm.
If it said the work is limited to feasibility studies, design, and construction, that would be a whole nother matter.
Well, it does say it has to be used for buildings under the care of the select board.
But it's for funding various capital projects
for buildings. So it's basically building maintenance.
For buildings under their care, yeah.
Right. So I think it
is limited.
Right? Yeah, it's limited to any use for, as long as it's associated with the building, right?
Right. Correct. The thing is, this is where commas matter. It says various capital projects for buildings under the care, custody, and control of the select board. Are there buildings that are under the care, custody, and control of the select board? What buildings?
Everything but schools.
Right. Town hall, library, police, fire,
highway, police,
Long Lake Beach.
Yeah, everything.
Is there, I mean, we have, the ability to vote on this immediately prior to town meeting if there's, verbiage that we would, or clarifications we want to ask for from the town administrator or select board. We can kind of come away with ask if folks have questions or don't feel comfortable making a recommendation on it tonight, or, we could vote either way. I guess we could vote either way tonight to support, not support, or we can ask for more information if there's information that the committee members would be interested in prior to the special town meeting, and we're posted immediately before that next week as well. So, and I'm fine with whatever direction the majority wants to kind of lead us in, but I'm definitely is a little bit different than what we've done in the past. I understand the intent of it, right, with all the projects we have out there, but it's a first for me too, where it's not a specific ask for a specific thing.
Yeah, I mean, I could see someone at town meeting amending the last sentence to say the work is limited to feasibility studies, design, and construction. But
all right. Well,
but Steve, your understanding is that this, at least the bulk of this, will be used to support the Indian Hill project.
To fund the feasibility study for Indian Hill, yes. As far as what improvements are needed.
Okay.
Whatever other maintenance work needs to be done in any of the buildings. I mean, we still have to maintain town hall.
All right. Well, I mean, any further discussion on this? I mean, if someone is inclined to make a motion, we can head down that road, or if no one would like to do so, we can ask for more info prior to next Wednesday.
Hey, just a quick question, another education question. If these are budgets that were underspent, do we need to apply them somewhere, or can we just say the budgets are now closed and we don't move the money somewhere?
Well, in the past, we close them out and we've moved that to free cash, right, Alicia? Or into stabilization, right? Yep. So it has to go somewhere. This is just, as opposed to putting it back in the bank, as we've done in the past, this article would be tagging it for a specific purpose, which is the difference this time.
Okay.
It's also a matter of having the funds available now as opposed to waiting 2 years till they flow through free cash.
Right. Okay. Or waiting till a regular town meeting to fight for feasibility with everything else that's out there, right?
And if you look at two of the three biggest items that are there, the second from the bottom, facility improvements from the PMBC, 47,000, and a couple up from that, facility improvements from the PMBC, 71,000. So it's already been earmarked for these types of things. Once it's just being repurposed for basically the same thing.
Right.
Yeah, I'm okay with this. I mean, I understand we want to be able to react quickly. It's just, I just want to be careful about the precedent it sets.
Okay.
I think the impetus for this was certainly having the money available to do the feasibility study for what's needed at Indian Hill.
Right.
Other than that, I think all this money would have probably flowed to free cash like it normally does.
Right.
Right. And it just would have been better if they had said that.
Right. But
it's an imperfect world, so we move on.
Well, I mean, the town hasn't voted to buy Indian Hill, so I don't think they could say that specifically here, because then if it didn't pass, it would be in limbo again.
Well, it would go to free cash.
But not based on the wording of this vote.
It would go into this fund. So whether Indian Hill passes or not, this article, if this passes, it goes into this fund for various capital projects for buildings.
Right. No, I just mean Brian had said if it had said it was for a feasibility study of Indian Hill, and then that didn't pass, but this did. Now it's stuck in that that usage.
Right.
All right. Any additional comments or questions for Alicia on this one?
So moved.
Second.
All right. We have a motion and a second that the Finance Committee supports Article 8 to rescind and reprogram prior capital town meeting warrant articles at the special town meeting on the 15th of February. Roll call vote. Tom?
Aye.
Brian?
Yeah, sure.
Al?
Who? Al?
Al?
Oh, Al. Al? Al?
Can't hear Alvin. He's coming off mute, but I can't hear him.
Sorry, can you hear me now? Aye.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Aye.
Aye, okay. Gary?
Aye.
Fred?
No, I'm just kidding. I'm kidding. Yes.
All right. Yeah, and I'm a yes as well. I just have the same, the precedent thing is bugging me a little bit, but I'll support this as well. All right. Back to 7. Alicia, why don't you read through this one?
Okay, so for this one, see if the town will vote to acquire by purchase, gift, or eminent domain or otherwise, on such terms and conditions as select board may determine, all or portion of the property located at 32 and 36 King Street for general municipal purposes, and authorize the select board to accept the deed to the town for a fee, simple interest or less, and to 2, raise an appropriate transfer from available funds or borrow a sum or sums of money for the acquisition of 32 and 36 King Street. Motion moved and seconded by select board that the town vote to, and then everything I just said, and to authorize the town treasurer with the approval of the select board to borrow $3,500,000 in accordance with Chapter 44, Section 7(1) of the Massachusetts General Laws or by enabling authority, and to issue bonds or notes of the town therefore. And then we were notified today that they're having an open house on Saturday.
Who is they?
The town administrator's office notified the finance committee the open house.
No, the note came from Ryan, but I didn't know who's hosting the. So it's town administrator is hosting it.
But my kid used to go to the music school there, so I'm pretty familiar with it. It's funny. We just had an hour discussion about getting a 31% match for CPA, and this is a building that we look to be getting for about a third of what it would cost us to build it. So, I think was the road here perfect? No, but I'm going to vote yes.
And with that, I'm going to.
So, sorry, Alicia, go ahead.
I was just going to stop sharing unless you want to keep the screen up.
No, you can pull it down.
Okay.
I think the role of the finance committee is, sort of twofold. One is, can the town afford articles, and do we think it's a reasonable use of town funds? And Steve has shown that, the town can afford it. And then to me, the question is it a reasonable use of town funds? And as long as people realize if they spend $3.5 million on this, next year they're not going to have the $3.5 million to spend on something else. It's life is choices, and town meetings are choices. So I think as long as everybody's going into it with their eyes open, I don't see a reason to try to block it or not support it. I'm not sure that I would do with it what they're doing, but that's the town's choice, the selectmen's choice, what to do with the facility. So that's my 2 cents on it. I think it passes sort of the sniff test and the litmus test in my mind. And I think.
Go ahead.
Go ahead, Al.
I was just gonna say my thoughts are, I think it's a great price on the property. The problem I have is there's many unknowns on the build out to get it ready for service, and then what's the uptick to the operational budget going forward? I don't think we've gotten those numbers. I think a few of us have requested it different ways, and that's my concern is we can pay for this, but are there other higher priority items coming in the next couple of years that we can use this money for? What's the cost of building this and getting it ready besides the $3.5 million? And then what's the operational uptick? That's my concerns on this.
Yep. Well founded.
Yeah, what's the time frame in terms of and who's moving in? Park and Rec and who else?
The schools.
School.
The
Yeah. School administration.
And so what's the time frame on them moving over there? Do we know that?
Mm-mm.
No, as a municipal project, you have to go through a feasibility stage. And then once you get to that point, you decide, what the layout's going to look like and how much, then you have to go out to bid to have, whatever that scope of work done. Probably won't be back until fall town meeting. With a project, I would think. Steve, can you see any way that they'd be able to pull that off for May?
I really don't know. I don't know what the plans are for that.
Right. But
they have to at least wait till town meeting to get the funds for the feasibility study. So, it's at least July 1st then, that they don't start till.
Didn't we just give them the feasibility?
Yeah, I was going to say, exactly.
Oh, no, I'm sorry. Yeah. I'm getting my town meetings mixed up. Yes, I'll start right away.
he had another retirement party today, so he's...
Yeah, I'm stuffed with pizza.
Right. But even with starting that right away, I mean, by the time, the warrant closes for the regular town meeting, that's probably pretty tight, right? I think.
Yeah, but
probably.
Yeah. To Tom's question, it's likely that people aren't moving in there until the beginning of the year, I would think. If you can't start the build out until after fall town meeting, you're kind of stuck, I think, unless it's a really small build out and the $350,000 covers it. Because there's no place else to get the money that I know of.
Right.
Hey, it could be a CPA project.
Jerry, any thoughts from you on this?
No, I mean, I'm going to go see it. I haven't been in the building in a long time, but I am prepared to support it. I do think that the location being by the schools is, really highly desirable. And I do think it is a lot cheaper than building a new building. I mean, I do wish we did have more numbers because, we do have a lot of, not a lot of, but we have some older buildings that obviously cost a lot of money. And now we're starting to hear that, the police station, even though it feels new, it might not be big enough. And the DPW, I don't even know when that building was built, but I feel like it wasn't that old and it's not big enough. And so,
yeah,
I would like to have more of that, but
absolutely.
Well,
I agree with you on the location. I mean, you couldn't find a property on a better location right next to the schools. Even if in the future we tore the old barn down and did something different with it, it's available, property available adjacent to the high school. And when everybody
parking lot,
yeah.
And it's available now, so
yeah.
Who does that leave in town hall in Shattuck?
Steve the Nudie.
Steve forever. No, I mean it leaves all the town, all the town departments besides Park and Rec, and the schools and highway, police, and fire. Right, everyone else would still be there at least temporarily.
Right.
The senior center, the senior department, would move in a couple of years. Library's already out, right? But I mean, it would, finance, administration, town clerk, that would all stay there until we know what's going on with future plans of 550 or whatever that's going to be, right? I mean, this is obviously step one and multiple steps, right? Which is the other part of the lack of clarity and picture, I think, right? I mean, again, I agree with it, with whatever I said, right? I mean, the parcel's great and we're not going to get something right next to the high school. It's just knowing there's a bunch of stuff that's coming that's not in the cap plan, and how far that is. I mean, I think we really need to make sure we're educating the town there's a lot out there, and that doesn't have identified funding sources. And while this is all great stuff, I mean, we're going to have to figure out how we're going to pay for all of it, and pay for things outside the levy, right? I mean, we're not going to be able to do, the schools and all this stuff, forever like this, right? With some of the big stuff coming. I mean, even if we can continue to fit feasibility, renovation, things like that there are big items that are coming, and we haven't had an override for quite some time, right? Which is testament to what everyone's done. But we're not going to stay there forever for some of this larger stuff. So, I mean, kind of the will of everyone here, right? And I think we're all kind of in a similar place. I mean, we Jerry, you and maybe others are going to go and tour the building on Saturday. I mean, like I said before, me personally, I would love to hear if there's any new information on Monday and get folks' thoughts on Saturday. But I'm not, if the majority feels that they feel comfortable with making a recommendation today, I'm not opposed to that. Either really is, do we need to do that, or is there any harm in seeing if anything else comes out that we want to talk about, or talk about the facility as we view it. But again, if
look, I'm okay either way. I think, it's probably not a truly ideal space for either of the groups that's going into it. But it's space.
Well,
I mean, really, it's not an ideal. If you started with a clean sheet of paper, you wouldn't end up with that building. And, but for the price, municipality couldn't build that building for what we're buying it for. So
yeah,
we can sort of look at it that way. And if the schools are okay going in there, and Park and Rec are okay going in there, I guess why not? Hard for me to get excited about it, but it's hard for me to say no.
And then the ultimate goal then being that Shattuck would at some point be vacant and sold.
Yeah, I mean, the 26 wing is going to be basically vacant. The only thing that'll be left in there is LCTV, I think.
Right.
And the second floor and the third floor of the library, the old library, are going to be vacant because Park and Rec has those now for their teen center. So that a big slice of Town Hall is going to be vacant. And then, what happens next is up in the air.
Okay.
So I would be okay voting on town meeting floor, but if people want to go and either get a better feel for what the building's like, that's fine.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I can't tour the building, but my preference would be to vote on town meeting floor just so I can watch, any additional information on Monday night. But again, if the majority want to move it today, and that's where I land personally, right?
What time is the open house?
10 to 12, or 11 to 1 or something.
Okay.
It's from 10 a.m. to 12 p.m.
Okay.
Is that too early for you to get up on a Saturday, Tom? Or?
As long as I serve food and coffee, I'm good.
All right. Well,
I'm good either way as well.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, Brian, you have any more thoughts? I mean, again, unless anyone wants to make a motion, that'll become the default. The default plan is we'll vote this. We'll vote it prior to town meeting. But
So I'll say, as much as I said I wasn't sure that the agenda covered this, we're doing it. And I will say I hate those little impromptu huddles at 6:30 on town meeting floor. It's not televised. No one can hear us. If we're going to vote, let's do it tonight.
Yeah, Brian, I agree. I'm okay with voting for it tonight. And to your point and Fred's, I mean, we can't build that for the price.
Yep, I think that's the driving factor at this point.
So I'm going to make a motion that Fincom approves.
Second.
All right, so Fincom recommends, right? So we have a motion and a second. Yeah, so we have a motion and a second that Finance Committee recommends the purchase of Indian Hill Article 7 at the special town meeting for February 15th. Roll call vote. Brian?
Aye.
Tom?
Aye.
Lost Alvin, looks like. So, Gary?
Aye.
Fred?
Yes.
All right. And I guess somebody else as well. So
we are enthusiastic yeses tonight.
All right. Alicia, anything else in your finance director update? That was it, right?
That's it.
All right. So going back to our agenda, because we're almost done. But public input, we have two, Cindy and Sal, that are still hanging in the lobby. If either of you would like to be heard, feel free to raise your hand. All right. Alicia, can you let Solomon back into?
Sure.
Thank you. Welcome back.
Hello again. So thank you for your muted support, but support nonetheless for the Indian Hill project. I was just going to comment on the 10-year budget plan that was shown. I think that, in some ways it's almost alarmist, because there are many of those projects. You went through the budget for this year, and the $6 million request from the schools turned into 600,000 or something along those lines. And I suspect there's similar things throughout the budget there, so that it's a little hard to understand, and if those aren't real numbers or aren't what we're really going to spend.
Well, I think what you're seeing. So yeah, I think it didn't have the detail, but what you're seeing, those items in fiscal 24 that aren't funded in 24 will move out to subsequent years, right? So specific to the schools, there was a request for roofing, which is now replaced with a much smaller feasibility study, but the larger cost project will still be there and just move out to a subsequent fiscal.
Yeah, no, sure. And also, I guess there's also other funding sources, right? The ambulances that will have their own funds, the grants that are not included there, things like that. So it's not maybe as terrifying as it looks, although it's still big numbers.
Yep.
Right, and there are some wants on there. They're not all needs. So
exactly, yeah.
All right. Looks like Cindy has her hand up now as well. If you could let her and Alicia.
Yep.
Hey, Cindy.
Good evening, everybody.
Hey, Cindy.
I don't know where my camera went. I apologize.
That's okay. Thanks for having us.
Oh wait, I found it. Hold on, start the video. That helps. Here I am. I just wanted to say thank you for supporting Article 7. I appreciate all your comments. I'm actually putting together a presentation for the town meeting on next week. And your comments here tonight were very helpful. There's been, a few comments on social media that echoed some of your concerns as well. So I'm hoping that we can answer those and satisfy everybody on Wednesday evening. I think one thing to just kind of emphasize is that this project just came along by opportunity. We weren't certain when the building was going to go up for sale. And timing kind of worked out well just because we were planning on having a special town meeting to address the gun dealers. So that's why this has just kind of come out of nowhere. I can appreciate from your standpoint, though, that perhaps there should have been some discussion going back that we were looking at this building. We were talking to the owners at Indian Hill and asking for a right of first refusal. I don't know why that information didn't get to your group, but that's something that we certainly need to work on and improve on going forward. So that being said, I just wanted to say thank you for supporting it, and I look forward to seeing everybody next week and Saturday as well. If you do have time, stop in and see the building. I did tour it back when we were doing our needs assessment, and I think you'll be pleasantly surprised when you see it, to see and envision it with the Park and Rec department and the school department in that space. I think it'll all come together for you if you do get to see it on Saturday. So that's all. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Cindy.
Thanks.
Take care, Cindy.
Thanks.
All right. Member updates. So, Fred, any additional updates on things we have not yet discussed, or things we did discuss?
I think the only thing I think it would be worth spending a little time with Steve in the future on the debt service. If you looked at his graph, next year is going up to over $5 million from this year at 3 and change. In the year after that's 4.5 or something. So that's serious money coming out of the budget in the next couple of years. Now, I know we've got some stabilization money there that we can mitigate some of the pain, but the next 2 years could be quite tight unless 510 King or 550 King, whatever it is, really starts to kick in. But I think it's highly unlikely that we'll see any financial benefit from that property much before FY27 for us. So I just don't think that we're going to get that big balloon coming in time to mitigate some of the increased debt service over the next couple of years. So just keep that in mind going into next year's thought process for the budget.
Yeah, Fred, I think, that makes me think too, looking at the debt service, in concert with the line item detail of the 10-year capital plan, right? I think, for CPC to kind of build their story for the regular town meeting, if they're going to go for that additional match and the select board so inclined, right? I think, looking at that story, and what articles there CPC could offset and how that rolls into it all. I think that's, be an interesting or a good workshop for us all to have prior to May. Spend some time there. Jerry, any member updates for you?
Yeah, no, just along the line with that and thinking about the presentation from the CPC tonight, I always hate to leave any money on the table. So I do want to try to see if we can figure out a creative way to make sure that we maximize those funds, whether it be from, raising the surcharge a little bit or, from us funding it. But I just hate to lose that money. So I'd like us to spend some time looking into that.
Yep.
Tom?
No update, just a question in terms of the senior center and where that project stands, and then where the sewer project stands. wonder if anyone can provide some updates on that.
And what I sent out today, I gave a little update on the senior center. It's kind of been delayed. They were thinking construction would be probably starting in the spring, and that's probably delayed to late summer right now, maybe even early fall. So I think they're running into issues with their subcontractors right now, and trying to, as they call it, value engineer the building to what the appropriation really is. So that's where that stands. The SOAR is moving forward. The SOAR commissioners have gotten a signed letter requesting the flows from the owners of 550 King. So that's the first step in guaranteeing that the town is no longer the largest user of the potential source system. It's now the Lipoli company. And they are going out to bid, I believe, this month, later this month.
I think the end of the month.
End of the month. And from what Nick said, they should be opening bids mid-March or so. So we'd have a better idea of what those costs are going to be.
Oh, good.
So there's a lot of information to be coming with that, and we should make sure that the SOAR commissioners and the water commissioners are keeping the Fincom and the select board appraised of what's going on.
Yeah. Great. Thanks, Steve.
Yep.
Brian?
Just best wishes for Steve's wife's surgery next week. And nothing else. See y'all Wednesday, well, Saturday, but then Wednesday at 6:30.
Right.
Before I was at the last Light and Water meeting, and they did say that they're happy to come before us anytime. So if you have a meeting you want me to set up with them, they'd be happy to come and update us.
Yeah, Jerry, I would love for them to be on our next meeting. I'll look at the calendar. I think our schedule's been out of whack with all these joint meetings.
Right.
So I'm not sure what our next normal one would have been. I think it might be the 28th. But I'll confirm that. But it'd definitely be good to have them in front of you for the budget block. So we also had a placeholder meeting for next Tuesday. I don't feel we have the need for that. So we'll just post for prior to immediately prior to town meeting, a half hour before, just in case. And kind of go from there. The one other update I had, or one other thing to mention, just I'd forgotten we got a letter from a resident. So we had gotten a letter from George Sanders regarding the CPC conversation, right? Nothing really actionable there, but just for those that did not see that, he had concerns around the increase in taxes. So I'm sure we'll hear additional public input as we go through the process, and clearly at town meeting if there ends up being an article for this in May. Next on the agenda was minutes. We do not have Marilyn here, as I mentioned, but we will. She has a couple of meetings. She's going to do minutes from the recording, and we'll vote a slew of minutes probably at our next meeting on I think the 28th. So with that, I would love to get a motion to adjourn if anyone is so inclined.
Second.
Can I get a second? All right. Roll call vote. Brian?
Yes.
Jerry?
Yes.
Tom?
Yes.
And Fred?
Yes.
All right. I guess I'm a yes as well. I'm enjoying the company though, but with that we're adjourned. I'm gonna go get some supper, and we will see everyone on Wednesday.